All right, we are live.
We're live. We're live. We're live. Good evening, everyone. It's V, the Guerrilla Economist, and I'm with the whole entire crew here over at Rogue Media, the one and only CJ, the dynamic professor himself, Ken Shorjan, the Bankster Slayer herself, and we have none other than the Intelligence Insider W. We have an action-packed team here. Guys, amazing night. Amazing State of the Union. Let's go around the table and let's just talk about it real quick. And Siege, I'll start with you, then we'll go to Bankster, actually let's start with ladies first. Bankster Slay, I'll start with you, then we'll go to CJ and W and Ken, and we'll take it from there. I think your cam is on, Bankster.
There you go. Yeah, I think you hit the wrong button, Bankster. There you go.
But they'll look the same to me. Anyway, good evening, guys.
Good evening.
Yeah, that was very much a feel-good speech. I noticed right off the way Melania was dressed, all white.
Stunning. Last
year, she wore all black. And she came out looking like she had just had a fight with her husband. It was a very dark feeling last year, but not this year. Mm-hmm. All smiles, all very positive.
Very positive. CJ, what do you think?
I think overall, I agree with Bankster. It's kind of one of those, feel-good speeches, touch base. I started to feel like a political pundit because I started keeping like little tickers on the we, unity, together, our, and I stopped keeping track after about 50 because, those are very key words that they, but just, I think the overall trying to build a consensus of unity, which I think right now is needed in DC. I don't think we'll ever get there, but at least I think there's going to be an honest attempt to achieve that.
Sure. Kenneth, go ahead.
Yeah, the two things that stood out for me were, when whoever put that in the speech, whether it was his words or somebody else's, Americans are dreamers too.
Amen.
The dreamers, and also people. So, within a minute, I was on Twitter and I put that as a hashtag. Hopefully I'll get some credit for it, but who knows?
That is great. That's a great hashtag.
The other thing that stood out for me was when he put in the subtle jab against the FBI when he said that I need Congress to give me the power to public officials who are not working for America's benefit and to hire those who are going to work. That was a complete jab at the FBI, at the deep state, at the whole bureaucracy that's been killing America for 40 years without coming out and naming the FBI or anybody else. Those are the two things that stood out for me.
Absolutely. Turbo Man W, what do you think?
Well, I actually, Ken and I hit on the same thing. My concern is that we have this entitled government employee status where it's difficult, if not impossible, to get rid of somebody who's not actually doing their job well. They have a non-competitive attitude in many agencies, and so they just don't have a business acumen, that's similar to the private market. Now, that's not to say that that's exactly going to be the case ever or possible, but there does need to be some performance-based measures in place that allow you to weed out those people that really aren't, performing up to snuff. And I don't expect everybody to be going at 1 trillion miles an hour, but I do think that everybody, you could go right across the audience, and everybody has an experience that's very frustrating, where they know that he's not speaking out of school. That's a very real problem for our country.
Yeah, I totally agree. My take on this, the whole thing is that, I agree with all you guys. I think it was a very positive, very upbeat State of the Union. The main factor that, I'm one of the things I've always said is our schizophrenic foreign policy that never changes no matter who's elected. and I was looking out for key buzzwords. One of the things that was on the radar for me was the whole North Korea thing. And Korea is a bag of worms. But one thing we do have a lot of circumstantial evidence about, and that has come out in recent time, is North Korea is, more and more evidence is showing is actually a deep covert intelligence creation of Western intel during the Cold War. Why else would, as of late, before he resigned, why else would Eric Schmidt of Google be in North Korea? There's so much other evidence beyond that. But that was the thing that stood out to me. What's your guys' take on the whole foreign policy with the Middle East and with North Korea and all those things? Bankster, I'll go with you. Go ahead.
Well, aside from the foreign policy, I did want to mention something about the North Korea part near the end.
Sure. Yes. Go ahead.
That also was a little jab at what we think is going on with the release of the memo when he was describing that man who had escaped from the oppression of North Korea. And he says, regarding the North Korean government, he says, what the regime fears most is the truth. And that, I think, was a little bit of a hidden message that didn't have anything to do with North Korea.
I could definitely see that. I think there was a lot of a double entendard in tonight's speech. A lot of things he was saying. There's definitely a hidden meaning. There's definitely some jabs, a couple of zings, and a couple of warning shots, especially with Guantanamo, especially with I want to be able to put people who are enemy combatants, especially with the intel that we've been able to glean last several months with what's happening with Guantanamo and the mobilization of National Guardsmen, which we'll get on to later in the program. CJ, your take.
Foreign policy, right?
Yes.
Foreign policy. Yeah, I think I was a little bit overcritical. I have the bar set way up high. I truly do, and for the right reason. So when you take a look at foreign policy and taking credit for Syria, for liberating Syria, I find that very laughable. The whole story about Sung Ho with being crippled by a train and then hobbling home and then getting therapy and then finding some way to get to China and getting an artificial leg. I found it laughable. I'm so sorry. I was like laughing through the whole commentary, and I know most Americans probably weren't like that. And then they had to plug that, he was the first question that he got asked when he got back to North Korea was like, did they talk to you about Christianity? And did they talk to you about Christianity? If they did, come on, can we become adults at some point? I'm just kind of past it, as far as my personal beliefs. And I know that that's probably not the majority of audience. That's not the majority of Trump believers, but darn it, I had the bar set way up. So on the foreign policy portion, I probably give him probably a C-, probably almost a D.
Got it. Good.
Yeah, his foreign policy really didn't stand out to me because one, it's very quick that generations forget that the reason that Iran is in the state it is because we stood Shah on them.
Absolutely.
There's a reason why they rebelled against the Shah. And the last thing that Iran wants is for the United States to get involved with regime change again. Correct. The other side of the coin is something I mentioned, a number of times long ago at that kook Ahmadinejad, when he used to give speeches at the UN and that against Israel, he almost rarely ever mentioned Jews.
Correct.
In terms of his speeches, talked about Zionists. And Zionism is a political movement that was started by the Rothschilds. The Iranians remember their history. Okay, the Rothschilds were involved in breaking up the Ottoman Empire and starting World War I, which led to the creation of Persia, which then led to the colonization of the Middle East by Western powers. So Iran has a long history of remembering this stuff. I mean, Persia is one of the great empires in history. So with that being said, over Iran, trying to prop up Jerusalem, when it appears Korea accomplished what they wanted and is now trying to neighbor on the stage, you know, I think if he pushes the hard line places, all we're going to have is another 8 to 10 years of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot worse. Except, you know, the reason being is the Persians know how to fight. W, your take, sir. Foreign policy.
Well, my thinking is that it's healthy for the world when the U.S. focuses on its own house.
Yes.
Because if they're counting on us to help them, we have to be healthy enough in order to be able to provide that assistance and do it from a position of strength. And when we're depleted, weakened, diluted, it's very difficult to get good assistance, and it makes us vulnerable. It makes them vulnerable. When we're strong, which is what we're trying to do, is get our strength back, rebuild our muscles, then we're a good ally. And so I would think that the world, if it was, you know, honest, would be glad to see us, you know, going back to the gym, doing a little bit of weightlifting, eating correctly, and getting a bit of protein in our system so we can go out and throw the weight around. Because the reality is, as tough as it is on the foreign policy stuff, the wars, the things that we've been involved in that were wrong, we do have to be strong. Not there. There are real threats from both Russia and China and other groups. We need that strength in order to be able to, you know, light the way for the world. And if we don't have that strength, this world goes to pot really fast, and that's the course we're already on.
Right. Absolutely. My take on foreign policy is this. You know, I think there was a lot of political rhetoric. Let's be honest here, 99.99% of Americans have no clue what's going on overseas. They're absolutely clueless. The thing about ISIS being wiped out by coalition, I mean, we all know on this program, you know, who really wiped out ISIS, and that's Russia. We got to give credit where credit's due. Russia was fixing the mess that we started, and they rightfully were able to fix a lot of the issues there. And there's tons of evidence of us coddling, whether it's us or some deep state faction that belongs to the United States. There's plenty of evidence there in terms of them helping ISIS, or USIS as I like to call it. But at the end of the day, the foreign policy is still a bewilderment, and I guess it's rightfully so. Because at this stage of the game, Americans have no concept in foreign policy. Foreign policy will only be formed when we face that economic collapse, when we face that that economic reset that we've been talking about for so long. Then we could have some sort of a clear-cut foreign policy. But this right now, when I look at the foreign policy, when I look at the real hard economic data, it's run to failure. Is that what you guys see as well?
Well, let's just start with the oil. The world runs on energy, and so do we. And one of the things that's going to make the biggest difference in the U.S.'s economy is not exporting our labor, their money for other people's resources and their labor, and therefore their citizenship's profit or their industrialist profits. And so that is the starting point for rebuilding our economy. And if you remember when oil prices were up and Canada went up and started digging into their tar sands, remember how far down the loonie was, and it came back completely in just in a handful of years. Now, oil prices have been back down.
You're breaking up a little bit, W.
Most expensive product in the world to go after. We're bringing those prices down competitive. That oil, where it's at right now in the mid, is a huge deal for our economy and for our stability.
Got it. Economics. There was a lot of talk about infrastructure. There was a lot of talk about energy independence, like what W was saying. Guys, we know in the background there's rising inflation, there's rising interest rates that are happening. We see with the debacle in the bond market. What do you guys think of the economic takeaways from the speech? Bankster, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was encouraging about the money to be given to infrastructure projects. We know that that's always needed. Oh, although I'm curious as to what the public will feel about this being like another New Deal project. There's a lot of controversy about how effective that really was, but it's something that will make people feel hopeful at getting jobs and stimulating the economy in local areas. So we'll see.
Right. It's like that Larry Summers emotional economy or something. Ken, go ahead. Your turn, sir.
Yeah, the infrastructure, to tell the truth, is absolutely necessary. Look, if they're going to spend $1 to $1.5 trillion deficit spending, which they don't have anything to really replace it, you might as well use the money on infrastructure and jobs versus welfare. Correct. Welfare accomplishes you absolutely nothing. The thing about it is you take a look at all the things that's been going on, the dilapidated cities, what is it, 34,000 bridges are now outdated. You have to go back to the Roman Empire. There's a reason why the Romans built roads, because all trade came to Rome. China is building the Silk Road. They're not stupid. The road is going to be built on a combination of modernization and improving the wireless technologies to be able to do internet-based business. So with that being said, you might as well put the money there, especially if you're already past the point of return that the dollar is going to collapse and we're going to have to do a currency reset or a great reset anyway. Spend the money. Isn't this what Bix Weir said? It was part of the Road to Ruta. Yeah. That Greenspan said that we're going to go fiat. We're just going to spend it all on creating infrastructure and building up society. So when it collapses and we quote unquote go back to a gold standard, then we can start from scratch, but we'll have the modernization. We can laugh at China's ghost cities, but guess what? Every single one of them's modernized, and they can bring in the foreign capital investment. We need that infrastructure, bring in the foreign capital investment, because they're not going to want to work in dilapidated cities and towns.
Absolutely. W, your take.
Here's the deal. Going ahead and spending the money, helicopter Ben Bernanke said we were going to drop it from helicopters if we had to. That is part of the plan, is to just spend it all. And of course, with that inflated money, pay off all the bills that came into being in the interim. That's how you wash it all away at some level. And that can make a lot of sense. The problem is that it's a very dicey game, because are you getting stuff that's actually got real productive value, like those cities in China? What are they doing? And it's amazing. You start looking at whole cities built to mimic Washington D.C. or places in New York, the Pentagon, and nobody's there. They're just copies sitting there waiting to find some use. So with that in mind, are we going to do infrastructure that actually gives us a return, or is it going to be somehow wasted? Factories and things that make things, or are we going to roboticize everything and deindustrialize? That's the big question. And of course, that's really the question for us as a country. Are we going to go back to an industrial phase of some type, a productive phase of some type, or are we going to deindustrialize and go the way of the tulip revolution? They were making beautiful things that served no real productive purpose. So what are we going to do? Are we going to rebuild a new world, or are we going to just make art?
Right. TJ, your take.
Yeah, as far as the economy, I think he was on point. A lot of things, very strong. Probably his strongest points of the entire speech. Speaking regarding unemployment, the taxes, how it's going to help drive our economy for these next few years. And in part, we know it's going to be very important for the United States to ramp up our manufacturing, to bring more manufacturing, more jobs, back to the United States, which is so important. He really coined the term he said about at the beginning of his speech as far as a new American moment. And that really resonated with me, because I think that it is time for our legislatures to put some of these things aside, to take a look at some of the changes that need to occur. So so on the infrastructure, I think that was a big win. I also like, as far as the medical treatments, the right to try, understanding that the drug prices for the most part have really crippled the average American, as far as the high drug prices. So I think it's great that he takes a look at that. I would like for him to have taken that a step forward and saying, hey, we are going to give patients the right to choose, life-ending drugs and so forth, and including alternative medicines, whether it's, cannabis. I think that could have been an opportunity time to discuss that, at that moment. And then also, as far as the other thing that kind of stuck out, was talking about the fact that, this trade balance, that, looking at, we want to do trade, we want to do it fairly, we want to do it equally, we want to be strong partners, globally. And to me, that's something the last, several years, where we have just basically given away the loot. We have basically just given away so much jobs, so much of our economy to overseas, countries, and it hasn't played favorable to our economy. So it's time to do some self-interest things to help, ramp things up as we head into potentially, the next, years are going to be very turbulent. So the economy definitely was his strongest points. I would like for him to, shift away a little bit from so much of the military. We already spend more than 8 times any other country on our military. We need to find a way to shift away from that military-driven based economy and focus on, what he said in his speech. Railroad, high, mass transit, those types of programs that could help the United States significantly.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you guys said. More spending on the military is the most wasteful thing at this point. I think there's a lot of waste there. There's a lot of pork that needs to be cut, trimmed, make an effective weapon system, so on and so forth. Infrastructure spending is wonderful. I think it's a great job. I agree with all of you guys. I think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's, again, preparing ourselves for a real physical economy. And I think we need to have a physical economy set up. The sooner the better. It would greatly help with the transition, because all of us know the dollar is on borrowed time. The quicker we get that infrastructure set up, that physical economy set up, the better we all will be. Closing statements on this program. Deb, go ahead. Bankster.
Yeah, I was just thinking that we haven't really talked about the things he did not talk about. Didn't talk much about China, certainly not about Russiagate. Didn't talk about the memo overtly. Right. But there were a lot of messages. I was thinking here, if what we think is going to happen with the release of that memo, what would you, as President Trump, the chess master, who's thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead, what kind of speech would you give to position yourself for after that moment, when if the arrest that we think may happen will happen? And this was that speech, because you're going to try to build. In fact, I noticed Jerome Corsi already was retweeting a tweet with a graphic that focused on the comment Trump made about this is the time to build unity in the nation. Right. It proved to be a very big message. If things work out the way that it might, that there's going to have to be a unity building feeling to bring the country together, because that is going to cause some kind of dissension.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Ken, your take. What your final takeaways? And again, take your time with it. We're in no rush.
Yeah. I think W, if you possibly
hit the mute button, W.
Yeah, because I've got your car in the background. I can. Okay, there we go. The thing that stood out for me is the speech was well crafted for a number of different things. One, it let the American people, who at least have critical thinking, understand what the battles that are being faced. I don't believe we're going to have any type of unity in the Congress. I think this was some of what he was saying was actually setting up people to watch between now and the midterm elections, because really, I don't think there's going to be a lot done by Congress. Maybe immigration, but the way that Schumer has already stepped up he's going to fight that tooth and nail. But one of the more important things that's going to happen, really, that I'm looking at is we've all been watching the bond markets.
Correct.
And the bond markets are screaming something major is coming down the pike very quickly.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, one of the reasons why perhaps that the white hats, as we may call them, have put in their support for Trump was because he understands how to deal with bankruptcies as well as the art of the deal. And Trump is not going to come out and say the dollar is dead, it's going to go away, or he's not going to say that he's willing to give up reserve currency status, even though he probably knows deep down that America is not going to succeed without the support of China. He's not stupid enough to realize, or to not realize, that China is the world's biggest producing economy. It's the world's biggest banking system, and it is creating the Silk Road, which is going to dominate, trade and the financial system going into the 21st century. With that being said, that's why I'm thinking he needs desperately to get this infrastructure thing passed as quickly as possible early in this year to get the money set aside, because if that monetary system does change, Congress is not going to even want to dare touch any type of additional spending, because they're going to be dealing with the fallout of an instantaneous drop in standard of living. And so I think Trump is walking a fine line. He's trying to push the important things, which are immigration, which if the world does experience a global currency reset, how many those from South America and Mexico are going to suddenly come running to us again? We're already seeing this in Venezuela. We're already seeing Mexico start to decline and fall. So I think that the border wall is such a necessary act, as well as the infrastructure, getting that going. And the thing about it is, too, the military, if there's going to be that turmoil from a global currency reset, well, just take a look at Europe, what Europe turned into after World War I, when everybody was dead broke. If the world goes into that place where a large portion loses a standard of living when they're already on welfare, where the 1% or the 1/10 of 1% already own more than 50% of the global wealth, you got to prepare for these things, and you really don't know what the outcome is going to be. That's just been my thought on looking at some of the things that are being pushed, while some of the other things are being sort of left on the wayside. I think it's going to be, what we're going to see coming out of this change, this paradigm shift. I can't even imagine what they're going to be, but they're going to have to be something. Otherwise, can you imagine what this country is going to turn into?
It'd be catastrophic. That's why we are in the race against time here. There's no doubt about that. I think Trump understands that very clearly. And those challenges are definitely not something to be had in conversation with the American public at this time. W, your take, sir.
Yeah, here's my take on it. Remember that what happened with Reagan when he came into office, right off the bat, one of the last things that Carter done, which caused great angst, was he canceled the B-1 program. And then he said, we got something better that's in the wings, and it's going to be way better. So we're not going to build this bomber. We're going to build a B-2. And, of course, that was a decade off. And Reagan said, no way.
I just lost W's audio.
Is he back?
W, I think we lost your audio. You may need to rejoin.
CJ, your take. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. W may need to rejoin real quick as well. Just in terms of the speech in general, real quick, I thought the three big wins, things that resonated with me, was the new American moment, because I think it's time that we put America first. It's time that we take a look at what the opportunities are, not only for the foreigners, but also for Americans. And I think Trump has made very bold initiatives as far as reforming, immigration in our country. And I think it's a step in the right direction to take a look at. I can't remember what the estimated numbers were that he gave. Well over 1 million undocumented illegal, Americans that are here, illegal aliens in the United States, and giving them an opportunity to work towards citizenship, to become Americans, to work towards the American dream. And that's something that for so long has just been, overlooked, and the can kicked down the road. So I really applaud him for taking efforts there. One of the other big wins, V, that I have listed here is just support, for our military. And by no means is it the veterans' fault as far as, some of the wars, some of the things that have happened. But when we take a hard look at the homelessness, at the suicides, at the depression, at the state of our military veterans, it's long overdue that we correct that. And I know Trump is going to do that. So that's a big win. And then my other big win is religious liberty. And religious liberty to me is faith, is Christianity, is promoting Christianity beliefs. For far too long, that has been corroded in our country, and it's time that we take that back. We are a Christian nation, and to be able to say that, proudly, and he said that really resonated when he said, we do stand, for the American flag. We are Christians. We're one nation under God. So big win there. As far as just some of the opportunities, some of the things that I was really looking, hoping that he would say. Earlier, I was listening to commentary from, I can't remember what news station it was, and they said something very unsettling to me. And it said, yeah, it really looks like this administration is really settling it more into a traditional administration. I was like, no. That's not what I voted for, right? I didn't vote for, traditional to fall into that path. So as far as, forward thinking, as far as some of the opportunities, I think, again, taking a look primarily at some of the foreign policy that, hey, that we may need to dial back. Now, again, stating what he did today, that could buy him some more time to focus on the things here domestically, keeping the neocons, keeping those things in check to allow him to afford him the opportunity to focus on things domestically here in the U.S. And then also as far as, another opportunity, again, I think that, he spent a lot of time talking about is it MS-13? And I almost felt like that I was like, MS-13 has become the new Al-Qaeda, or MS-13 has become the new ISIS.
There's a reason for that. We know that there's a tie between MS-13 and the Seth Rich murders. There's a whole tie between MS-13 and the Democrats.
So and then him, really kind of pushing forth with the drug wars, and we all know where that has gotten us the last several years, is that, literally nowhere with the drug wars and the opioid addiction that's gripped this country. So I think some initiative there, but for the most part, definitely, I think it was very visionary. I think he listed some things that really trying to change some major reform here in our country. So let's hope. I agree. I can't remember who stated it earlier that the Democrats aren't going to fall in line. That nothing's going to change there. V.
Absolutely agreed. Do we have W back or?
No, I think he dropped off. I'll send him a text real quick.
Yeah, no worries. We're going to wrap it up anyway. It's late in the evening. There's a lot of things here. Overall, I think it's a fantastic State of the Reunion compared to the 8 years of Odumbo, where it was, literally, guys, we were just sitting there just biting our knuckles, just watching this guy up there for 8 long years, just spewing utter nonsense and tripe. And it's refreshing. There is hope, real hope, and there's actually real changes happening. And last but not least, I just want to go around real quick before we close out. The next few weeks, what do you guys see transpiring? Let's talk about the memos. Let's talk about some of the theories that are floating around under the surface. Deb, I'll go with you, then we'll go with Ken and CJ.
Did you notice that right out the gate at the top of the speech, he mentioned the righteous mission? I thought that was an interesting phrase.
Yes.
And he said, we have endured fires, and he said, and we have endured storms. And I thought that was a little bit of a key word to the calm before the storm crowd. But it was peppered all through this about, I pick up on what Ken said earlier about the point about the people deserve a government who is loyal to you. It's time to restore the bonds of trust in government. He mentioned he commended the Iranians for standing up against the corruption in their own government. There was all these little messages being given. So that this all may be in preparation for what is going to come next. And it's hard to avoid thinking about the possibility that the release of this memo is going to finally generate some kind of arrest. It's the consensus is so strong out there. So if that's the case, then this is the preparation for what comes after that.
Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, what I think I see over the next few weeks is, by the way, CNN about 20 minutes ago reported, take this with a grain of salt, that Trump is going to release the memo immediately after the State of the Union.
I love it.
I can see exactly why he didn't do it before, because there would have been so much scuttlebutt, it would have taken away from what he had to say. With that being said, I get, McCabe, I think one of the reasons why they forced out McCabe and are threatening his retirement is because he's going to spill the beans. Like a guy who is going to crumble under pressure and do this. Rosenstein is supposed to be the next one to go. I think you're going to start seeing the dominoes, and this is why the Democrats are so scared, because their names, Hillary, the election, etc., are going to be. We're going to see a summer of dominoes falling like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah,
you were asking about the next few weeks, but the biggest thing that scares me, like I said, are we at the point with Janet Yellen leaving and Jay Powell going in, is what we saw today. Gregory Mannarino had the perfect breakdown of the markets today. Today was what he called a pan sell-off. There was no safe havens. Bonds crashed, stocks crashed, Bitcoin or cryptos crashed, gold crashed, everything crashed. When have you ever seen that? Usually the money will go into a safe haven, but it was a complete sell-off for liquidity.
It was.
Are we starting to see that again? And it's really on the preparation, because isn't tomorrow FOMC? Are we starting to see?
Yes, it is. It is.
We're starting to see where the Fed may finally be taking the hand off the lever. With that being said, who knows what's going to happen? Is today's market move an anomaly, or is it the start of something big? So, you take a look at a lot of the cities, the homeless, the dilapidation, you can talk about all these jobs being created, but it's going to take years, if not a decade or more, what America has fallen to. And it's going to take more than Donald Trump. It's going to take a change along the lines of what maybe we saw with the Marshall Plan, Bretton Woods, only on a scale of tens of trillions of dollars worldwide. Who knows? But everything is starting to get to that point. You can just feel it in the air that something big is about to happen, whether it's going to be in the next few days, weeks, or months. But 2018 is going to be massive.
I think this is the year, man. This is the absolute year. It's going to be absolutely incredible. We're off to the races on this. CJ, your take, man.
Yeah, I think Ken nailed it. Because I've kind of been sensing kind of the same thing. So, yeah. So apparently, looks like we're heading into, I think, another, budget crisis, another potential, government shutdown. Trump will be facing that. As far as the memo and releasing it, I mean, there's pretty much a huge consensus built from the American public. The House Oversight Committee approved it to get it released. I think that's the best weapon against the globalists, against the Democrats, is the truth, because we have that on our side. So let's get the truth out there. Let's move past this whole Mueller investigation. I mean, to take a moment to think and reflect upon, what Trump has been able to do in his first year of office, despite the amount of things that have came at him, left, right, the media, everything. I mean, the guy deserves a medal. I mean, forget it whether he's a Democrat or Republican. The amount of hate, the amount of criminality that's faced when there's no point in history that we've faced this before. And again, to Ken's point, it's going to be larger than one person. So we'll have to face that. Let's release the memo. Let's see specifically, what's in it, so that way we can begin to assess exactly what happened, and then more importantly, that this administration can move past this whole, fake Russian collusion.
W, your take on the perp walk and the memo, man.
Let me just finish this one thought I had. The military-industrial complex, that's what runs the country, is based around right now. And if we don't get that rolling again, you're asking it to do something that we're not actually geared up to do. And so the first part of getting the country going from Trump's perspective is what Reagan did. Get that spending going, get the money flowing. You can steer a moving ship. That's his attitude. And it's the military that asked him to come in and do this run and go for the presidency. They're the ones that are backing him. He has to kowtow to them somewhat while he is securing the position of the country. If the activity is going to be what has been projected by Q to be coming down the pike, he's going to need a strong military on multiple bases to keep some stability in the country, because you're talking about multiple federal agencies that are going to go through some level of dysfunction, and to stabilize these locations that have been stirred up by this previous administration or the last several administrations around the world. You're not going to do that with a weak military. And so that money flowing and getting the military going again, as much as it may be repulsive, and I've been as upset about what our country's been involved in, the muckraking that's going on out there around the world, as anybody, and all of you know that. But the way to solve these is not to go into our shell. That way is really certain death at this point in time. So he has to spend that money. He has to keep those military leaders close to him and comfortable that they have what they need within their areas of command as he tries to bring things back under control. Then you can come back to the rest of the politics, the country, the economy, and try to get things on course. If you look at what's going on with the projected arrests, and I said this privately with some of you over the last several days when others were saying that he was going to have these high-profile arrests over the next couple of days, and I was pretty skeptical because the people that he has to go after have not actually been vilified with the people that put them on a pedestal. With us, yeah, we want them arrested yesterday and charged with high crimes. But they have a constituency that still sees them, in some perfected form. And so they need to be helped. They are fellow Americans to at least understand that we're not off our rockers to expose these people for what they are and to see them deposed and moved out of the public arena. We have to undermine those un-American operations. And so part of what Trump is also doing is he's taking the money flow away. The threat to go over and seize assets. Well, if these people are going to fund Antifa and other efforts, and it's really un-American activities, then he's going to go after those people that throw the funding at it. And that's what he's telegraphed. And I think that's stuff that's going to have some level of disruption But right now he's just doing it as threats, and he's letting them make the next move. It's like moving your chess pieces into a particular position, and now the other side has to think, okay, if I do this, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. They can see what the other moves are, and they're counting how many moves out they think they can push their advantage or their disadvantage. And so Trump's telegraphing, here's the moves I can do. You go ahead and do it, but go for it. Waiting for them to take these next moves that then force a response from him that they are not going to like. And that's what these next few weeks are about. Now, tomorrow, with the trifecta of the blood moon, super moon, blue moon, and then a eclipse thrown in for good measure, I think that a lot of this stuff starts tomorrow. I think that he did exactly what he had to do today with the State of the Union. It's a steady hand at the wheel, show where we're at. He didn't telegraph these next moves that completely. But I think we're going to see over this next series of days the other foot coming down and starting the agenda for the next year. He talked about the last year, the State of the Union to this moment, steady hand at the wheel, things are moving along. And now, tomorrow, I think we start the kick-ass part of the Trump administration. And people think he's already done that. I don't think he's done that yet. I think tomorrow starts the kick-ass.
Wow. Very well said. Thank all of you for being on and joining us for this this time that we went over and dissected the State of the Union. I agree with everything that you guys have been saying for the most part. Yes, I think tomorrow is definitely kick-ass day. Something's happening, and I think all of us can sense that something is truly happening here. Something that's really different from what we've ever seen before at any point. So I'm very excited.
Can I tell you? Can I let you know what I think it's going to sound like starting tomorrow? Let me show you.
And there he goes.
Yeah, I only hit 100 there. So anyway, 100 a day or put it away.
That's it. I agree with that.
That's the Trump motto. That'll be the hashtag for the rest of this administration. 100 a day or put it away. He is going. The mile markers are going to be going by like fence posts as we get further into these next few weeks. And remember, the other thing I did say, that year where we see these people taken out of positions of authority, dropping like flies, acts of God or whatever, that doesn't end until April 1st. We've already seen people forget how many people have dropped to the wayside, including all these CEOs and upper management of the companies that have just disappeared.
Yeah.
And retired and gone away. Politicians that nobody thought would ever go away, announcing that they're not running again. This is far from over. That first year that I was talking about was April to April. Because why? Because that's the year that these other people are going by, their Babylonian year. And Trump's going to make a big show of that starting on their big occult holiday day tomorrow, marked by this moon. The next 60 days are going to be something to watch.
Absolutely. I agree. I'm excited. One thing is definitely for sure. It's quite exciting to see this, to witness all of this, without a doubt. I want to thank all of you for listening in. And CJ, your closing comments, and then you could just go ahead and take it away, buddy.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. Did you want to finish up? Did you have anything else?
Yeah, no, that's it. With that being said, folks, I think we've covered the gambit. It was a great State of the Union. There's a lot of things to be hopeful for. I think it's some great opportunities out there. There's some great opportunities out there if you look. It's going to be exciting to see in the next few months what's going to be transpiring here. With that being said, I'm the Gorilla, the entire cohort, Bankster Slayer, Ken Jordan Jr., W, the Intelligence Insider, and CJ, aka El Cuco. We're over and out. Take it away, buddy.